Welcome everyone to the Living Consciously television show, coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios, the Internet Television Studios. And we are being streamed right now on YouTube Live, as well as ConsciousEvolutionMedia.com and on Google+. And let me introduce you to a very great guest that we have this afternoon. It's a special edition of Living Consciously TV. Her name is Judy May Murphy, and she's a speaker, a success coach, and an author. And she's joining us from that faraway place called Ireland. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And our theme today is we're gonna be quite practical today. We're gonna talk about authenticity, which is, it's been one of my pet peeves for a long time, because we have thousands of people come through Conscious Evolution Media, and these are all coaches, of course, and a lot of people are doctors and PhDs, lots of smart people. And what I'm finding interesting, and I certainly want to get your opinion about this, is that a lot of people have learned how to talk a good game, but then they don't walk the talk. How do you experience that in our industry called the personal development industry, Judy May?
I believe that for the most part, people are coming from a good place. They do want to make a difference. They do want to walk the talk, as you say. They do want to have things be the best that they can be. But then along the way, they kind of lose sight of their own development and their own ways of staying healthy or staying connected to people, staying in the job, as it were. And they take their eye off that, and instead they start looking outside of themselves to, well, how are my clients doing? How are my audiences doing? How am I being perceived? And so it's just so important that those of us who are presenting ourselves as leaders, teachers, healers of any kind, that we make sure that we are leading authentically, that we are actually living the life that we are encouraging others to lead.
Very cool. So how did you, I'm certain, I'm actually feeling this, that you do walk the talk. If you didn't walk the talk, I'm sure it would be very difficult for you to do what you do, because you actually coaches, speakers, and people that are very passionate about whatever it is that they're doing in our industry. So how did you get to this place? I feel that there are hundreds of thousands of coaches out there in the world, and probably I don't think the 20-80 rule applies. It's probably much less than that, maybe 5 to 95 rule, meaning that 5% of the coaches out there earning 95% of the income. How do you feel about that?
That's probably an accurate figure. And it's my job to make sure that that changes, to make sure that people are not just earning a living from it, because most people, when they come to me initially, it's because they're still working another job and they would love to make home their full-time job. And the thing that they really want to be doing is full-time giving their gift, full-time communicating what they know people need to hear. And it's how to do that. But in order to do that, there's no magic formula. And some people are a little bit dissatisfied. They want to be told, here's what you do, here are the companies you go to, here's what you say, here are the people you walk up to, here's how you do it, and you'll start to make the big money. But in fact, there needs to be that internal shift. Money is an amazing teacher, and it doesn't show anyone favors. It really just, it works the way it works. It's a mechanics, and when you are not doing what you need to do, and when you've got blocks, money will teach you, money will show you, usually initially in the form of just not showing up, not being there. And in order for coaches to be able to start to earn money, they need to really look at themselves, not just what was I taught about money in my home, but really, am I good at receiving? And am I good at standing up and saying, I've got value, what I'm offering you has amazing value, here's the value that you are going to give back to me. So a lot of it is about reciprocity. And I think that that's a key thing, because most coaches tend to be people who are very comfortable with giving and not so comfortable with receiving. And that is, for most of them, their big lesson. How can they stand up and say, not only am I worthy of receiving, but also I insist on doing this at the highest standards so that I can ask for the big bucks?
Yeah, I agree. A lot of them are servers. They like to serve. And I think a lot of times they forget about themselves. They don't
And
put themselves.
ultimately, mhm,
Yeah, they don't put
ultimately they're not
themselves as number one. I can tell
no,
that you put yourself number one. I can tell just by
oh,
looking at you.
yeah, thank you. I do. I do. I really make sure, because that's my number one job, is to make sure that Judy Maybe is having the experience that she was put here to have on the earth. So completely. Everything. I love art. I'm surrounded by art. My office, my home's full of original artwork. I now wear the clothes I want to wear. I go and stay in the five-star hotels I want to stay in. I travel the way I want to travel. I have, just everything that I really want. Wanting now for me isn't some kind of signal that I'll get a little bit of it and the rest will be filled up with disappointment. It is just a signal of that what is there for me to experience. And that is the big thing that I need to teach people, is that service is not servile. It's not about making yourself less than. It's not about you having less in the hope that someone else can have more. It doesn't work, and it's no kind of way to show up as a role model.
Fantastic. So, were there a period in your life, Judy May, when you didn't have the money?
Oh yes, several.
So you mean like you made it several times and lost it and got up and started over?
Well, just when I remember when I was a teenager. I lived in Ireland in the 80s as a teenager, and those were very difficult times. Although I had parents who were doctors, and I grew up in this gorgeous 8-bedroom Victorian mansion, there just wasn't the money to do the kind of things that we're able to do today. And then after I left university, so there was enough money for me to stay in university. I worked my way through university, looking after children on film sets and in theaters, and writing articles and things. And then when I left, suddenly it was just like, well, goodness, I have these two awesome degrees and I still can't make money. And then I moved to Kathmandu first, lived there for a long time, and that was easy money-wise because I was the richest person even when I was poor. And then I moved to Paris, and that was really tough. That was when I hit rock bottom. I was living on a mattress in someone else's hallway, couldn't feed myself many nights, had to walk everywhere. I think I bought about 2 outfits that entire year, and really cheaply in sales, and really knew what it was like to starve. And that was just the most incredible thing for me, because it really taught me that I had to wake up and do things very differently, that I wasn't able to I wasn't going to be able to keep just absorbing information passively the way you are required to do in university, and you kind of, you write your thesis and so you become a little bit active, but I really wasn't contributing to the world, so I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn what was necessary in order to not starve, because I'd never lived off the state. Here in Europe, it's a little bit easier to be on welfare, and some people who have very good educations and very good backgrounds and very good opportunities sadly just kind of fall back on the state and don't allow themselves to learn the lessons that they need to learn. So it was very tough time, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
So do you remember a shift that you had experienced? Like, was there something, did a light bulb go off one day inside of you, or did a transformation occur just in a matter of seconds? Something happened?
It was a series of shifts. So the first big one was that I had been crazy about this guy when I was living in Paris, absolutely just besotted with him. And he started to date a girl who knew how to look after herself. She, had, her hair was fabulous, her clothes were amazing. When she walked into a restaurant, she was able to just order food without even thinking about it. And I was kind of in awe of her. And I saw that although I was the one that was always available, and I was the giver, and I was the real sweetheart, as everyone used to say, still he was choosing her. And there was something about that I, for years, didn't work out exactly what it was. But really, it's that we train people how to treat us. She was training everybody, including this great guy, that she was worth taking care of by taking care of herself. So that was one shift. And then there was another time when I was, one of my first people I trained with was Tony Robbins. I just adore Tony. And I ended up being on someone's boat. And I just thought, wow, this person that I know, that I've been hanging out with, that they've already created their wealth, and they own a boat, and they're able to just go and be free and do what they want to do. And they were talking about an event that they decided to go to that was going to be in Switzerland, and that they were all going to just charter a private plane and go to Switzerland. And I was like, wow, I can't even have that conversation right now. what do I need to do? Because I was just like, these people are not smarter than me. They are smarter than me money-wise right now, but they're not smarter, they're not better. So there's got to be a way that I can get there. And I've always then had in the back of my mind this idea of, when I do this, I'm going to be an amazing example, particularly for women, of the fact that we can do this, and we're not going to be rejected. There's not going to be less love when we start to stand up for ourselves financially. And now that I have done it, the amount of women that sort of say, wow, I can finally see someone that I want to be more like. I can see that I don't have to choose between being good and being wealthy. And that was always, always in the back of my mind. So anytime along the way that I've met a woman who is struggling, I know that I'm not just doing this for me, that I'm doing this for her as well.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so you developed, I think, a number of very interesting programs, and of course you've written a number of books as well. I couldn't find out exactly how many books you've written, but it doesn't really matter. But your books have been published in 20 different countries, which is quite interesting. And I don't know if you knew, I'm actually European. I came to the U.S. in 1974, and you and I have quite a bit in common. I actually, Tony Robbins was the first person that caught my eye in terms of personal development, and I started my journey with Tony Robbins. This is going back over 30 years ago. So,
oh wow!
Isn't that
He is just so amazing. That is very interesting. And I believe that people, when they do have some sort of shift, whether it's a geographical shift or a shift in their circumstances, or there's been an accident or a divorce, or there's something big that really rocks your life, I really believe that that causes people to do one of two things. To either decide that this means they're going to make their lives amazing, that they are never going to feel this pain again, or that they are going to just self-protect and follow the rules, and then hopefully they won't get hit again. But obviously when you do it the first way and you make the decision that this means that you're going to make your life incredible so that nothing can hurt you like that again, then that's when you know you're on the path to being who you were sent here to be.
Fantastic. So the program that caught my eye when I was doing a little research about you is the Legendary Status Program. That title by itself speaks volumes. and it is as attractive as you. So tell me, how many times guys bug you every day?
Oh, thank you. They're so sweet. I do believe that it is a question of you just, when anyone shines brightly, it really is a question of anyone at any age, in any kind of shape or form, when you shine brightly, people turn. They just turn because they know that that's their nature too. And so that they just want to be around that. And when I understood that, and I understood that it wasn't that I had to be defensive and kind of fight guys off, that I could actually just sort of say, well, thank you so much for saying that, and I really appreciate that. And then very quickly, you know, they would start to open up about something, and it would all become very human. That it wasn't anything that needed to be defended against. But it's interesting that you like the title Legendary Status, the Legendary Status Weekend.
I love it. I love it.
I struggled with that for a long time because I wondered, might people perceive that to be that I was talking about coming from an ego place and kind of being above everybody else. And it's not that. My belief is that we were all born to live beyond our lifetimes, that the legacy that we leave is meant to last hundreds, if not thousands of years. I'm very excited by history, reading history and finding these people that are no longer household names, not even in history. Very rare, kind of like 12th century Nordic poets and people like that are just bizarre stuff that only very strange academics usually know about. But I get very excited about them because I'm like, wow, they lived their life in such a way that they are touching me centuries later, and that is what I want for everyone to be able to do, and that's what becoming legendary is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me share with you and with the viewers why I like it. I like it for several reasons. One, it communicates a possibility to live into. Legendary status. I mean, who wouldn't want to have legendary status and leave something in the world that's worthwhile and leave the world much better than the way, you know, we found it when we were born? So that's one. Number two is it also seems to me that it serves as a screener. Like, not everybody is ready to have legendary status, right? Or do you think everybody is ready now? Because I don't believe they are. Because not everybody is ready to be on TV. They
I
think they
believe
are, but they're not.
I believe that everybody's ready to get to a next stage,
Hmm.
and that at some point words like legendary status will appeal because you'll be ready to kind of go big in a more public way, in a more practical way. But certainly there are some people who initially they say, I'm attracted to coming on your course, but I don't think I'm ready. And for them, we kind of have to tweak what legendary means. And for some people, the next step in becoming legendary is simply taking better care of themselves, making sure that they are speaking up and that they're speaking the truth and they're not allowing other people to shout them down. Or perhaps it's doing something like stepping onto a stage. There are so many, and you would know this, so many great healers and teachers out there who are not stepping on stage because they have a strange idea about what's required of them. So for everybody, there is a great new, amazing stage. And really, it's less about strategy, and it's more about just clearing away the old stuff. It's kind of like everyone has this super highway that they're meant to be driving down. And if the superhighway has got like all these different things like fallen trees and broken down cars on it, you're not going to be able to drive down it in the style and at the momentum to which you would like to do that. However, if you can just clear that stuff away, then you get to do it in the way that you're meant to do it, in a way that feels good, feels just, you feel elated and you feel on fire and you know you're getting somewhere. You're not just driving around this and driving around that and wondering, are you getting anywhere at all? So really that's what Legendary Status Weekend is about clearing the old stuff that's just not serving you so that you can live the way you're meant to live.
Would you say that primarily what people are clearing out a lot of times is their fear
Well,
or
do you know what? Yeah,
beliefs that they have?
and I think it's much more practical than that. I believe it's just sort of like little mind loops. Like if you get into a mind loop when you're younger, something along the lines of, my dad prefers my sister to me. You're
Hmm.
constantly defending around that and trying to, assert yourself as better than someone who doesn't need to be asserted around, that someone that is different from you and you're different from them, and both of you are allowed to shine in the same space. And so much energy is expended running these old loops, doing these things that used to serve you, because maybe when you were 6 years old and you weren't getting the attention you needed, maybe you did need to sing more prettily or dance more prettily to get your dad's attention. But what worked then doesn't work now. So it's about just identifying those and just sort of saying, well, do I need that anymore? And sort of thanking your old self for coming up with those great, impossibly creative solutions back then, because that's what
Hmm.
they were
At the time, it serves
at the
us. It
time.
serves us,
Yes.
but not
And,
maybe not 20, 30 years later.
and just moving on,
uh,
moving on. And for a lot of people, they are treating themselves in their lives today in a way that they were angry with their parents and their teachers for treating them when they were younger. So if you had a teacher who was really, really angry at you and didn't say to you, you're amazing, you can learn this, you can do this, I'll always say to someone, well, it sounds to me as if you're still being a little angry with yourself. It sounds to me as if you're not telling yourself that you can do this, that you can learn this. So how come that was something your teacher was supposed to do, and yet it's not something that you are requiring of yourself on a daily basis? Or if you grew up in a household where you weren't looked after well enough in terms of the food that was put on the table or the clothes that were put on your back, and I will ask that person, well, what is it that you are now doing to ensure that you will be able to eat in the way you would like to eat, good, healthy, beautiful food, and dress in the way that you would like to dress in a way that's worthy of the person you're showing up as? Because basically, once you turn 18, it becomes your job. But so often our energy goes towards looking at the fact that, mourning the fact that we didn't get what we wanted as kids, rather than putting that same energy towards giving that to ourselves now, giving ourselves the listening ear, giving ourselves the comforting hug, giving ourselves the great vacations, the great opportunities, learning, being patient with ourselves. All these were available when we were kids, and we're quite right to be pretty angry about that. But you know what? They're even more available to us now that we're adults, so let's start using them. Let's start going for it.
Yeah, I totally agree. So yeah, I mean, I resented my parents for many, many years, and I finally figured it out that, resenting them is basically losing my way because I was, through resenting them, I was resenting myself. I think most people figure this out, that if you don't like your parents, you basically don't like yourself.
Well, it just doesn't work after a while,
It
does it?
doesn't work. It doesn't
I
work.
think it is
Yeah.
important to kind of look back and say that part of my childhood was not okay. I deserved better than that, and it was a shame that I didn't get better than that.
Yeah, but they
And
did the best. They did the best they could. That's all.
sometimes they did, and sometimes they didn't. Sometimes
Sometimes
they
they did.
didn't.
Yeah.
Let's be honest about it. Sometimes they
Well,
didn't. Just as with us, sometimes we do our best in a day, and sometimes we don't.
sometimes we don't. Yeah. Sometimes we're conscious and sometimes we're not.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. Also, getting into the zone of genius caught my eye also. That's another great title. Talk to our viewers a little bit about that. What do you mean by getting into the zone of genius?
Everybody has something that they could be or already are amazing at. And so often we talk ourselves out of that. We say, well, it doesn't count. You might be a very patient, loving, nurturing mother, and you don't see that as genius. You only see things like computer abilities or financial abilities as genius. And then it's very interesting because I coach a lot of people who are, well, we call them semi-billionaires, like people who have, made at least $500 million in their lifetime. And for them, they don't identify themselves as financial geniuses because they discount that. And they see the people who are loving, the people who are in great relationships, or the people who are creative, the poets, the painters. They see those people as geniuses. So it's very interesting, first of all, how we discount our own latent or budding genius. And the next thing is that we believe often that geniuses are born rather than made. Genius is made, and at any age, you can start to build your own zone of genius. You can just decide, you know what, I love that. I know I'm going to be able to put the hours in. If you read Malcolm Gladwell's The Outliers, you can learn all about how important it is to put the hours in. Also, if you read something like Carol S. Dweck's book, Mindset, you can learn about how it is about being curious and being open and being willing to fail that allows you to build that genius rather than thinking, oh, I'm supposed to know this, and then kind of living quite defensively. And if you read other books, like I love Norman Doidge's book about the mind, and so it's all about neuroplasticity and about how the brain does grow and does change over time. It's not that we're kind of a done deal by the time childhood is finished, that our brain can continue to do what we require of it. So let's require more of our brains. Let's decide that we are moving into those zones of genius.
Awesome. So, who you are being, for me, I've been just getting in touch with this feeling, and I would say that your beingness, Judy May, for me is almost like success itself, because that is the energy that you're putting out there. And I'm curious, how often, maybe during the day or weekly, do you get people that are jealous of your success and try to maybe say something to hurt your feelings? Does that happen to you?
It doesn't happen at all. And I believe the reason is that I notice it when it's coming. I see the look in the eye. I see the disappointment. I see someone, supposing I'm in a beautiful hotel, and I'm there just kind of fixing my lipstick in a mirror. And there's a girl who is on the beginning rungs of her success. And she might be older than me, she might be younger than me. And she is cleaning. She's down on her hands and knees and she's cleaning. And if I catch that look from her, I will smile. And I'll say something to her like, wow, I remember doing a job like yours, it's really tough. And she'll just sort of say, oh, okay. So at first she knows that it's a path, that it's not something that I was just flown into. And then I will always manage to say, usually we'll get into conversation, because people do want to get into conversation. And when we get into that conversation, I will always, first of all, find out what it is they're interested in. So it happened a couple of days ago where one of a lovely gentleman who was bringing me my tea in a hotel lobby, I found out very quickly that he loves training dogs. That's his thing. And I said, wow. And how are you going to turn that into your amazing business? And he goes, well, it's not a business. It's just something that I love. I said, yeah, but wouldn't it be really cool if it could be a business? And he's kind of standing there going, yeah, do you think that's possible? And I said, I know it's possible. Now, I don't have any information about dogs. I've never had a dog. I don't know anything about dogs. But I do know that when someone has a zone of genius, that it can be monetized. Everything can be monetized because everything can give value. So very quickly, the people who are on that less kind of developed part of their path, if you like, and I'm talking in a very practical way, I'm not for one moment suggesting that there's a lack of spiritual development in them. In fact, for most of them, I could probably learn more from them than they could from me in that realm. But when it comes to the very, very practical things, the message that I let everybody know is, you can do this too. This is available for you as well. It's only just getting started, and that is the energy that people get from me, and that is the message that they get, and I say it. I make sure I don't leave it unsaid. I actually open my mouth and I say it. I will ask people, what is your dream? What is it that you want? If someone is bringing my suitcase up in a lift, I will turn to that it's usually a young man, I'll turn to that young man and I'll say, so, do you mind me asking, what's your dream? And sometimes you sort of wonder, oh, am I coming across as a complete cliche of a motivational speaker? But you know what? People really want to talk about it, and I love it, especially when people say, I don't know. I get very, very excited, and I say, well, why don't you have a think about it? And when I see you tomorrow, I'd love to hear. And they always come back to me, even if I'm so rushed and I'm so thinking about the TV show or the stage I'm about to step up on that I forget that that's the person I was speaking to last night. But they will always come back to me and say, do you remember you asked me that? And that really is all I do in the world, is I just remind people that they were put here to do something amazing. And I'll just stand there on the sidelines and I will just say, that's it, you've got it. Keep asking questions. Because for me, it's really interesting that you came up with the word success, because the word that I would apply to what I do is curiosity. That I will just show up and I just want to know. If something looks broken, why is it looking broken to me? If something feels sad, why is it feeling sad? And where would be a better place to take it? Or is it okay to stay in sadness for a while? So just I'm the whole time asking questions. And that really is what has led me to living a much more comfortable life and being able to be around a lot more people in a really good way, and to be able to serve in a non-servile way.
Awesome. So, I interviewed by now, in the last 10 years, thousands of people. And I came across a lot of people that seemed very, very congruent, very well put together in terms of how they dressed, in terms of how they spoke, in terms of their passion. They were very passionate about what it is that they were doing. But they still haven't made it to this legendary status. And I'm just curious, why do you think that is?
Well, for a start, that excites me for two reasons. Firstly, the thing is that maybe there's something that they are doing that they need to be in that place to do. But also the fact is, I know they're going to get there. They're just waiting for that little thing. Like for me, every time something becomes unlocked, I get to grow in a new way. I used to think of a dream as something that you go towards. And now I believe a dream is something that you grow around and you kind of engulf. And just as you grow bigger and you can let go of the stuff that keeps you small, you can kind of become engulfed around it. So there are some people who haven't yet grown in the ways that are allowing them to have the money that they want. Or for some people, they might have the money that they want, but they might not have the, say, a very kind way of talking, or they might not be able to take care of people's hearts terribly well. Or perhaps for some people, it's that they are just not healthy. So we all have our stuff. So I've got my stuff too. I mean, goodness me. When there's all kinds of things I'm working on. So please don't. I'm sure no one is thinking that I'm in any way perfect. But I will be really honest about it. And on the stage, I will say what I'm working on right now. Like in the last year, I realized that I'd become so busy that I had become very disconnected. and I was only really making time for the more superstar moments. So, you know, a friend of mine who has their own big TV show or stars in a movie, when they're coming into town, I make time for them. But I wasn't making time for, say, my old high school friends or for family in the same way. And I had to really sit down and say, well, what's that about? You know, what's that about that you are, you know, going for the more dopamine-driven hit rather than what you pertain to be about, and that is the more gentle, seeing everybody for who they are. And so I had to, you know, sit down and deal with that. And I know that there's so much more that will keep coming up. And you know, when I look at where I've come from, financially things are going really well. But then I look at some of the people that I coach and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm just beginning. The good that they are able to do in the world with their hundreds of millions is just incredible. And I need to be able to do that, and I need to start to work out ways that I can get to those levels. So I believe that for everybody, I really do keep the candle burning, as we say here in Ireland, for everybody in terms of, you know, that we're all finding our way home. And for some people, that they are going to do it faster than for others, you know. And my job is just to keep going out there, and particularly with coaches and with teachers. This is why I love, you know, coaching the big guys, as I call them, like the really big speakers out there. A lot of them are close personal friends, and a lot of them are clients. And the reason I love coaching them is because I know that as they grow around the next part of their dream, they are able to bring thousands of people with them. And that is very, very exciting to me, and that lets me know that what I'm doing is important here. And that's a great feeling to have, to know that you were put here for a reason, and that you are doing something good, and that you are increasing the love in the world. Really is the best feeling, better than even the stuff I thought would feel better. Don't get me wrong, awesome dresses, you know, buy designer dresses, don't knock it. Like, you know, people sort of say things like, oh, well, money can't buy you love. Money is not supposed to buy you love. They're two completely different energies. Money can buy you great stuff, and that is just a different part of joy, and I'm all about that as well.
Well, yeah, and don't forget about shoes. And
actually, I'm wearing my slippers right now. I'm not going to show you. It's coming up to bedtime here in Dublin, so you're not going to see the
yeah, that's fine. So as I was listening to you, what occurred to me is I'm just thinking about not because I want to talk about myself, but I like to sometimes bring in, you know, practical examples of my own or yours, so that viewers can identify with it. And I was thinking about, you know, what would be my legendary status, and I was thinking of that just for a moment. What came to me is something that I have thought about for quite some time now, is when I would feel pretty satisfied about my legendary status is if, when conscious evolution media has become a household word in every home, just like the brands that we all heard of, like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, McDonald's, you name it. Everybody knows who they are. And then I was hit immediately. How far am I still from that? Although, you know, we made a lot of strides in the last decade, but I'm still pretty far from that.
Well, we don't actually know that. We're always looking from the outside. We feel that we're very far from things. So daily, I'm coaching particularly women in their early 30s who are believing that their husband is very, very far from them. They might have just broken up from a particular relationship, or they might have, you know, just discovered something that felt like a big setback to them, or they might have had an accident. Something might have happened that led them to believe that they are further from their dream than they would like. And I always say, well, how do you know? You don't know. You know, we're co-creating here. We're not just doing it all on our own. It's not about us just sitting in a room by ourselves and creating the plan and ticking off the list. That there are people out there who have been building themselves and getting ready to be with us. So I would say to that woman, you know what? You don't know. You could go downstairs and immediately meet the man that you were supposed to marry. And I remember about, gosh, when was it? It was in 2003, 2004, having this conversation with an Australian girl. And 3 days later, she met the man that she has been married to for the last 9 years, and she has got 3 kids with him, and they're blissfully happy. And so I would say to you in the same vein, how do you know? How do you know that you are as far away as you are imagining? And it's not our job to know, because it also, how do we know that that is your legendary status? How do you know that maybe the world needs you to do this in order to provide something else, to be part of someone else's, what someone else is doing, and that the combined forces, you might never meet that person, but your combined forces will then lead you to do something great. Look at the great work that Bill Gates is doing, vaccinating kids in Africa right now. Mm-hmm. And you know, his path wasn't about creating medicines. His path was completely different, but the two paths have come together. Mm. So there are several different levels on which it really doesn't make sense to judge the journey. Instead, you know, trust that if you just stay curious and navigate according to what feels like the best thing to do right now, and then just do a head check on that does that make sense, you know, on a mechanical level, on a strategy level, and to remember that, you know, I always say God's got it. You know, it's like the people that are supposed to come into our lives, the lessons that are supposed to arrive, they're going to arrive. There's a bunch of stuff that we don't have to do that's going to just be provided for us. The great books that other people have written that we're going to read. The incredible, you know, the food that we eat that right now somebody else is growing in the ground. Somebody is tending a crop that is going to end up being part of your nutrition or my nutrition. There is so much that is being taken care of. So let's not judge our own part of the path too harshly or too soon.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. Well, I don't, you know, I don't know about the future. Actually, I don't spend much time in the future because, you know, I know that the future hasn't happened yet. So, and I try not to spend too much time in the past because, you know, for me, it's pretty much a waste of time rehashing what happened because it already has happened. But I do learn, you know, from, you know, what mistakes I make so that I don't hopefully make them again. But what's interesting is I noticed my last 10 years in this business of broadcasting that, you know, I get to a certain level and then I stay there for a while, and then something happens or somebody else comes into my life, like you said, and then I'm going to take it to another level, and it just occurs for me that way as I look at it. And is it how you experience your own development in life the same way, that you just hit these plateaus and then, you know, what's next?
Absolutely. And then isn't it hilarious when you look back at the earlier plateaus and you say, what was I thinking? What was I doing? And then when you've been around for long enough, you know that by the time you're 80, you're going to be looking back at your 50-year-old self and saying, what was I thinking? What was I doing? But at the time, it seems like the very best thing, the absolute wisest thing, all the things that you now see as being less than or not good enough or failures or too slow, at the time was the best thing. But equally, you know, we've got to think about the amount of people who died believing that they were failures, believing that they didn't do what they were put here to do. If you think of someone like Vincent van Gogh, or Van Gogh, as you say in America, the artist who didn't sell a painting, apart from he sold a few to his brother, but he didn't sell his painting while he was alive, and now his paintings routinely sell for millions. Not just sell for millions, but are seen by millions. I saw a beautiful Van Gogh in Mexico City that I had, and I'm a big art buff, and I thought I knew of every single painting by the man in existence. And so I found this beautiful one of sheep with a gorgeous skyline in it, and I stood there and I literally wept like an idiot in front of this painting for 20 minutes. It just touched me so deeply. And then I was able to go back to my hotel and give value to the people that I was speaking to that night. So, you know, we really, again, I'll just say it, we cannot judge. We've just got to show up knowing that when we take care of business, when we look after ourselves, when we stop second-guessing the dream, and we stop putting a cap on what it is that we're capable of, then that is the way things are meant to be. And the way that we know that we're in that is we feel it. We feel so joyful. I remember at so many points, even after I became a coach, even after I became a speaker, I would have months on end when I would just feel low, I'd be grumpy, I'd be resentful, and I would just try and push through to the next level. But always, I would know I was on track, and I still know I'm on track. The more great feelings I've got going on, feelings of calm, feelings of love, feelings of excitement, feelings of giddiness, craziness, all those awesome things, feelings of passion, that is what our emotions are for, to let us know, do we need to correct the course, or do we need to just keep going on this one?
Very cool. So how often do you recall that you have maybe experienced some, maybe the best way I could describe it is just how long, let me ask you this first, how long have you been doing this work in terms of coaching coaches?
15 years, full time.
15 years. Okay, so you got 5 years on me. Okay. You know, I don't know who said this. Do you know who said this? That if you put 10 years into whatever it is that you're doing and passionate about, you have become a master?
That was from Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers that we were just mentioning a little while ago.
Oh, okay.
The idea is that it takes 10 years in order to spend 10,000 hours doing something. But the interesting thing is that it really depends on not just the amount of hours that you put in or the amount of years that you put in, but it also depends on how you feel, how focused you are, and how passionate you are. Because without getting too kind of brain geeky about it, there are certain chemicals that are released when you feel passionately connected to something, and it kind of makes the experience more sticky, if you like, and it allows for different neural pathways to open up at different speeds, and for those pathways to grow stronger, and so you can be doing something in quite a lackadaisical way, and it's going to take you way longer than 10 years. Or you can do it in a super impassioned, very, very focused way, and it can take you a lot less than 10 years. So that is the good news. But the interesting thing is that right before my 15 years working in this industry, the 10 years before that were spent in clinical depression. I was on every kind of antidepressant out there. I was diagnosed depressed. I was told, well, your grandmother was depressed and you're very like her. You'll always have this. You'll have to manage this for the rest of your life. You'll probably be on medication for the rest of your life. The last 15 years, I haven't taken any kind of medication of any kind, not just no antidepressants. I am healthier and happier than I have ever been, and I've worked out that it's not about managing your depression, that it is about becoming the happiest person in the world. Once I set that as my task, my brain started to do that. If you set your brain the task to manage your depression, you're still going to have a depression to manage. So we go back to that lesson of whatever task you set your brain, that is what it's going to do.
It is why I was just reminded by what you just said. It is why I dislike the 12-step programs. It's because what they do in those 12-step programs is they teach you that who you are is whatever program you're in. So if you're an alcoholic, who you are is an alcoholic. And you have to admit it every meeting you go to. And
I believe that these days the 12-step programs are kind of becoming enlightened to that aspect of it, because I do believe that it's very useful for a lot of people, not just Alcoholics Anonymous, but also Codependence Anonymous and the other groups that are out there. But I absolutely agree with you that they are now realizing that identifying with that old way of being is absolutely not helpful, saying this is what I am. So a lot of people
because it's just a part. It's just, to me, it's just a part of a person that's an alcoholic, not the entire person. It's just a part of them.
And also, the thing that when we have chemical addictions, we could get very, very deep into this. The thing when we have chemical addictions of any kind, and I'm very blessed that I didn't. I actually haven't had any. I've had no alcohol for 15 years. I think I'm the only Irish woman over the age of 12 who doesn't ever have alcohol. No, I'm kidding. I'm being facetious. But the fact is that I'm in a culture that is very,
is a sex addiction a chemical? Is a sex addiction a chemical addiction?
Sorry, is what?
What do you mean?
Is
sex addiction?
No,
is sex addiction a chemical?
Yeah, all of them are, because what happens is whether you are addicted to alcohol, sex, a certain routine, you can be addicted to great things as well, or you can be addicted to TV, you can be addicted to running. Every single addiction that you have, what is it? it is simply that your brain starts to crave that. Your brain craves what you give it. So I always say to people, don't ask yourself, what do I want today? Because what you want today is who you were yesterday. Your brain craves to do what you did yesterday. So instead, ask yourself the question, what do I want tomorrow? Or who do I want to be tomorrow? So if you want to crave salad tomorrow, eat salad today. If you want to crave learning tomorrow, learn that thing today. One of my biggest joys in life is learning, particularly languages. And so I learned French, and my French is pretty fluent now, and then I went on and learned Spanish. I did that on YouTube, using half an hour a day, just on YouTube, the last 5 years. And then people said to me, I don't have half an hour. And I'm like, okay, here we go. So as well as doing the French and Spanish, I now do 5 minutes of Russian every day. And I've been doing that for the last year and a half, and it's purely an experiment so that no one can say to me, I don't have the time and I don't have the money, because those are the two big excuses.
Yeah,
but the interesting thing was, when I first started doing my 5 minutes of Russian today, it felt like an hour because it was so tedious to me. It felt horrible. But as I did it more and more and more, the brain again starts to crave what it did yesterday. So because I'm doing it at roughly the same time every day, it starts to, if I'm suddenly late because I'm on a call or because I'm spending extra time doing yoga or something, my brain will want to do Russian, and it kind of doesn't feel right until it's learned some Russian, in the same way as many people who have other addictions don't feel somehow right until they have sorted that out. And it's to do with the chemicals that are in the brain. But you've got to get tough with yourself initially and just say, look, we've got to take hold of this. We've got to change the brain chemistry. And you don't have to do that if you feel that you need the help of a doctor and medication initially to do that. But for most addictions that we have, addiction to television, give away the television. Addiction to cookies, throw out the cookies. Addiction to your credit cards, cut up your credit cards. So there's a lot of addictions, a lot of addictive behaviors that you can take care of just by not making it possible to have those things around you.
Well, I'm partially going to agree with you on that one. So far, I agreed with you on everything else, but now I'm going to have to partially agree with you on that one.
Okay, great. Which is the bit you don't agree? I love this.
No, I agree with everything. That the way to stop an addiction is that you have to stop doing whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
But I also learned, this is just, I mean, I cured myself from 2 of them, is that it has to be replaced with something else.
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah. Oh, we're on this absolute same page. You can't just take it away. The brain abhors a vacuum. Yeah. So,
yeah.
But a lot of people then they'll say, oh, I can't give up smoking because I'll start to eat. Okay. So does it have to be food that you go to once you give up cigarettes? How about instead we give you some practice that's like a martial arts practice or something else, or a juicing habit, or every time you want a cigarette you go and you make yourself vegetable juice, and
something good.
A really good one. So a lot of people get that exact point that you're making, and I completely agree with you that you can't just take something away. It needs to be replaced. But just be a little bit more careful about what you're replacing it with. So let's imagine that you were addicted to a particular relationship, and what a lot of women do is once that relationship becomes too much and they can no longer stay in an abusive relationship, even though they've been addicted for a long time, instead they swap that out for something like reading romance novels, because that limerence part of the addiction is missing to them. And so instead, if they were to say, right, what if I was to get as excited about building my own wealth and owning, say, my own house outright as I used to get about whether or not he was going to phone, wow, how different would my life be? And that is the thing I love doing as a coach, is getting people to have great addictions.
Okay, so what came to me right now is, what's that movie? It's in Seattle, whatever. When he says, Sleep in Seattle, when is it he says or she says? Oh, she says, he completes me.
Oh, that's Jerry Maguire. That is Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
Okay. So in Jerry Maguire, when he says to her, "You complete me," and then she says, "You had me at hello." I'm a girl. I know it.
Yeah. So when I hear that, it's like my stomach turns because I am at such a different place of my life, and I used to think that way too. Is that my relationship completed me, and I was always looking for whatever it is that I was missing. And I'm not missing anything, so I don't need to be in a relationship to be complete. I am already well and complete as I am.
And that's the way that we attract healthy relationships. Otherwise, if you are codependent, so if you are addicted to people and addicted to pleasing people and being the helpful one, you are going to attract your like, but your polar opposite, which is the narcissistic person, the person who is all about serving themselves, the person who is addicted, say, to something like work or some chemical rather than being addicted to people. So you will meet someone who's equally addicted. The only difference is you'll be addicted to them and they'll be addicted to something else. And that's where relationships generally don't work. But the great thing is that when you get to a point of completing yourself, you don't have to get rid of any of those awesome things like the romance, the passion, the excitement. All of those are still there. And that's the bit I thought that, wait a second, this kind of healthy way of doing relationships, this sounds a little bit boring to me. You mean, if he doesn't charge up on a white horse, wait, if I've already got my own money, how am I going to feel excited by him, whoever he is, right? But I didn't realize that these days, the men who are healthy and have created money, they only want to be with a woman who understands money. They don't want to be with a woman who relies on them. The guys who have money and are unhealthy, they will take a gold digger type that is feeling vulnerable around money. And those two people will never be happy. But the great thing is that you still get those awesome feelings of romance, those great feelings of being, like for women, these feelings of being safe and protected and adored are so vital to us. You still get those things, and you get them in a much safer and more consistent way once you build out your life in such a way as if they're not missing in the form of showing up as a knight in shining armor, you'll still be more than okay. You'll be really, really happy.
Awesome. So since we're in talking about relationships a little bit here, I just wanted to complete that cycle with something. Is that it's interesting that I see a lot of good in people. Usually that's where I go, but then I kind of learned that there's another side to people, because we always put our best side of us first when we develop a relationship with somebody, and that could be just a friendship, or it could be an intimate relationship. But we play this little game that we're the perfect mate or the perfect relationship, and then people really don't see some of the things, some of those quirky things that we might do, or I know that I'm not perfect either. I have stuff that I do that could tick somebody off, and but that stuff doesn't come out until until maybe a few months later or a year later, and then people see it, and then the question comes up: can I live with that? So it's not so much. I don't think relationships are anymore about can I be in love with this person? Because of course you will learn that you can be in love because you're attracted. But then once that attraction is worn off a little bit, we're going to start to get to know each other, and we're going to start to see some part of us that we don't want other people to see. But we can't help ourselves, because when you live with somebody, they're going to see it. They're going to experience it. And then don't you think then the question that really comes up is, I just answered my own question. Yeah, this doesn't really come up anymore, because when you're in a healthy relationship, you don't have to worry about finding somebody's, because what I was coming from is, if you have an addiction, for example, you don't want people to see it, and you're not going to let them see it maybe 6 months or a year into it, speaking from personal experience in my past. But I don't think you have to worry about it anymore, because when you complete and whole, you have nothing to hide, and I think that's cool.
Let's go a bit more practical around that, because for a lot of people who feel that they're very far from that place of being complete and whole, it's all very well us coming along and saying, well, get yourself healed, get yourself to a happy place, and they're like, how do I do that? I've been trying for 50 years, it's not working. So what we're talking about there, anytime we're hiding, it's because there's shame involved. A feeling not just of I've done something wrong, which is guilt, but a feeling of I am something wrong. There is something fundamentally broken and not okay about me. And we will do two things with that. We will either over-own it. So this is the thing that codependent type of people, people pleasers, servile types, healers, coaches, we tend to be more of the kind that will over-own it, and we'll feel our shame too much. We'll try to, make everyone like us in order to...
Overcompensate, you mean?
Oh, exactly, because we fear being abandoned because we are so broken. Then the other half of it, the people who are more sort of charming in their deception rather than helpful in their deception, those people tend to disown their shame. So they tend instead to just look at maybe what's broken about other people and to point the finger at other people, and it's never them. They're never the ones at fault. But they are equally shame-based. They're just doing something else with it. So the first question to ask yourself is, how broken do I feel? And what am I doing with that? Am I trying to over-earn my place at the table of life? Or am I trying to convince the world that I'm the only person worth anything and they are all less than? So you can find out which side of the coin you're working and then realize that it's not working for you, whichever side it is.
Wow, that's pretty genius.
But isn't it just so beautiful that we're all coming from that place? Like when we sort of say things like, we don't need to look down on someone, or we don't even need to look up and adore anybody. I believe it's because we're all coming from that very, very human place. And sometimes we're being a little bit too human, and we are forgetting that we are also divine. And sometimes we are disowning our humanity and the humanity of others, and over-owning the divine and becoming sort of like a despot. And this is what we see politically happening in our world, not just in politics, but also in homes. We'll often have someone who's decided that they are the worthy person and everyone else is unworthy, that their addiction or their TV show is more important than anybody else's needs. So those two extremes come from the same place, and they can only exist with each other. This is what the enabling is all about. Someone can only play the counterpart to your extreme when you are showing up in that extreme. But as soon as you start saying to yourself, you know what, I'm not broken, I'm a good person, I make mistakes, and I'm coming from a good place, and I'm allowed to make mistakes. And you know what, some people might leave me, and that's okay, because I'm not leaving me anymore. And you gradually start to walk that path into a more stable place. Those people who are still in the more exaggerated or extreme positions will just naturally move out of your life, or they will start their own journey towards that safer place that's more becoming of who they are.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. I never actually heard it described the way you just described it. That's very brilliant, because I remember when I was doing this addiction business, and how I was protecting myself is I was very secretive about my finances, because if people knew about what I did with my money, they would find out very quickly what I was addicted to, and I couldn't have any of that. So, I was in love with this lady, and she was actually a psychotherapist in Boulder, and we had this relationship of about a year, and no wonder she's left, because I would never be straight with her. I would never let her know how much money I made, where I spent my money, what I did with it, although I always paid for everything, whatever it is that we did. But I can see that now. At the time, I didn't see it, what was wrong with that, but I guess she knew it immediately that, maybe this guy is not somebody I want to spend the rest of my life with.
And isn't it interesting that it takes so much energy to cover up the things that we're ashamed of, rather than saying, this is what's going on, need a bit of help, need to change this. And that is the energy leak that I'm concerned about in the world. A lot of people are dedicating themselves, like my youngest brother has dedicated himself to the physical environment, to the trees and to recycling and reusing, and he runs like clinics for people to get their appliances mended. He's just the most awesome young man. The energy leak that I'm concerned about is that leak that you were just talking about there, where we spend so much of our resources, our internal resources, defending around this shame that we feel, and so we're not able to build a better world because so much is spent hiding what we're ashamed of.
Yeah, right on. And it directly relates to politics as well. We do it in government. We do it all over the place.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of secrecy, a
And
lot
the
of
thing is
hiding.
that what we have to do is, if we are requiring something of our political leaders, we have to ask ourselves, are we doing that in our own homes, in our own lives? So if we are expecting honesty and accountability of them, we've got to go first. We have to be their leaders. They've got a more kind of a very specific, responsible job in government, whether that's local government or national government. But we have to lead them by how we show up in our lives. If we're expecting them to be creative, are we being creative? If we're expecting them to come up with new solutions, are we coming up with new solutions? I think a lot of people are expecting the political leaders to be our spiritual leaders or our moral leaders or our practical leaders. No, we are the leaders, those of us who are asking the questions, simply because we know that the questions are there to be asked, simply because we know that there's more to be done, to be achieved, to become, to understand. That makes us the leaders, and it is our responsibility.
Yeah, it's completely clear, and it's right on. And if we all begin to do that, I mean, this world will be transformed overnight. Overnight, if everybody starts being responsible for themselves and doing what's right, how simple. This is really so simple. It's not even that complicated. Just do the right thing. Clean
Yeah,
clean up our lives and focus on why we came here. What really opens our heart, what it is that we want to do, why we came here. We all start doing that, it's amazing things will happen.
And it's so simple, it's so practical. So when I'm about to eat a meal, I eat about 6 to 8 small meals per day. And every time I'm about to eat the meal, I have this habit of asking myself, is this the way I would like the world to eat? And if the answer is no, then I don't eat it.
You don't eat it.
So if I'm about to eat something like, I make the most hilarious food. People laugh at my food. It's quite bizarre. So I'll make this thing that is made up of chopped up red bell peppers, pine nuts and avocados and coconut oil. I'll just mush it all up. And that will be a meal for me, like a couple of avocados and all that stuff going on. And I will look at it and I will be able to honestly say, wow, if every single person on the planet ate this for their next meal, that would be awesome. But then equally, if I'm, say, sitting outside in the piazza outside the Uffizi in Florence, and a waiter brings me a croissant, would I love for everybody to eat a croissant as they sit out in the open air in Florence on a beautiful spring day? Yes, that is the moment for eating a croissant. So it's not about being strict. It's about saying, is this what I would want for the world? And if the answer is yes, then that's your gauge. Is this, or if you want to make it
and
more...
And how does it make you feel, correct? How does it make you feel?
That's
does
it.
Does it make you feel good?
Does it make you feel good if that was to happen? Or I say a lot of, as I say, a lot of the men that I coach who are very, very financially successful, I will ask them, would you want someone to whisper into your little baby daughter's ear the same thing that you have going on in your mind right before you fall asleep? Would you want that to be her lullaby? And they're horrified. They're like, no, oh my goodness, the anger I've got going on, the anxiety I've got going on, the things I'm saying in my head. No. I said, well, what would you like to have the lullaby to be for your little baby girl? And then they'll tell me, I want her to hear that, that everything is safe, that it's all good, and I say, well, can we not have that standard for her daddy? Because isn't her daddy the person who's going to be looking after her? So let's just raise our standard here. And then they get it. Then they really, really get it. And they, rather than saying to them, hey, it's a good idea to listen to some meditative tapes before you go to bed, because they're going to override that. But when you can really make it specific, personal, and simple for people, that's when they start to do it. And it's those very simple changes. Rather than just having a really rushed shower, is it that you need a bubble bath with amazing music playing in the background? Instead of watching that TV show, do you need to switch that off and go and read some incredible classic literature? What is it that you could become addicted to if you just do it for a few days and let yourself know that it is going to be amazing for your life?
Fantastic. You just dropped a really beautiful nugget there, and I just want to make sure I want to pick it back up and make sure it doesn't get forgotten. You said that you coach these amazing men that have made millions and millions of dollars already. So the dots that I'm connecting there is, are you saying that you're coaching these people that they're making lots and lots of money and they are not happy.
Yeah, but let's be clear about it. When it comes to money, there's four positions. You can either be doing a terrible job and be really poor, or you can be doing a really good job of everything else and be really poor, or you can be doing a terrible job of everything else and be rich, or you can be doing a great job of everything else and be rich. We want that fourth position. We want you to be a good person who's making awesome money. So it's not that the wealth has distracted them from what they should have been doing. In fact, a lot of the lessons they then start to pick up on, they can pick up on very quickly. The lessons about how to treat people, the lessons about how to give, the lessons about how to feel good, the spiritual lessons, they can pick up on those very quickly because they are disciplined people and they are far-thinking people. I'm much more concerned about the people who are not creating much of anything, the people who don't yet know how incredible it feels to create wealth and health and love and learning, and I mean it's a smorgasbord. There's a lot of really, really good stuff out there, and we all have bits that we're missing. So yeah, for the I find for the wealthy people, sometimes it's that, sometimes it's that they might be anxious, so it's the emotional feel good that's missing. For many of them, it's the health that's missing, so they are drinking alcohol or having dairy or something like that. So we need to take care of that. I'm sorry, Steve. My connection seems to have gone. Oh, and he's back. Hello. How are you?
Yeah. I don't know what happened. It's one of those Google hiccups, but I'm back. All right, so that's fantastic. You're so awesome that I completely forgot about keeping track of time, which is my responsibility. But the conscious hour is already gone, and I don't want to keep you up any later than we need to. So I really enjoyed having this conversation with you, this dialogue, Judy May, about authenticity and being practical, and how people can come to you and if they are ready, whenever they are ready, to get their legendary status and get in touch with their zone of genius. So let's just tell them how they can get in touch with you and maybe get on one of these programs.
Absolutely. They can contact my office directly. It's info@judymay.tv. That's JUDYMAY.tv as in television. Or just, you can follow me on Twitter, Judy May Murphy, and I'm on Facebook, and I'm in all different parts of the world. So if someone has a platform, a way that they can bring me over to speak to their group, I'm always very, very open to do that. I just love meeting people in person, and I'm very excited to meet people out in Denver and in the States again. I'm really in the States.
Fantastic. And if you ever do come here to Denver, please let us know.
You know what? The last time I was in Denver, it was on a book tour, my very first book tour, and I went to the Tattered Book Cover.
Oh, yeah. Very famous bookstore.
I fell so in love with that bookstore. I didn't see any of the rest of Denver, so I'm due a repeat visit so I can see something other than the bookstore.
Did you go to the one in Cherry Creek?
No, literally, I didn't leave the bookstore.
Oh, okay, you never left. Okay, wow.
In 2 days, I didn't leave the bookstore.
Wow.
So there we go.
Fantastic. All right, so I really enjoyed you. I was bathing in your energy of success, and wow, it's been an awesome conscious hour. So thank you so much, Judy May, for being on our network, and hopefully we can get the show on PBS. And other than that, I love you all, and I'll see you as always next Tuesday on another edition of Living Consciously TV. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you, my pleasure. Good night.
Okay. Bye-bye.